You guys, it's the moment we've all been waiting for and coming at quite a surprise, I might add, but we have a hefty list of balance changes for you all in today's video. 15 total brawlers being balanced, 10 buffs, 5 nerfs. A lot of the things that we've been asking for leading up to these balance changes have been addressed, and some of the things I don't know if I totally agree with. So we'll be getting into my honest rundown and my opinions on these changes, how it will impact the meta, and everything else. So hope you guys are all pumped up. Let's get straight away into it. Here we go. Okay guys, so I am absolutely thrilled about these balance changes. I feel like they're going to be a great mix-up for the meta. Hopefully we see some brawlers being changed, and a lot of the things that I wanted to see in these balance changes were addressed, like I said before, but I also am a little bit disappointed in one in particular, one buff, which we'll be getting into later. So like I said before, we're going to be starting off with the buffs, and the very first one is to our main man, Colt, guys. I've been asking for this for the longest time. Colt is one of my favorite brawlers in the meta. He just couldn't receive a buff before when takedown was in the game because he would have been too good in that game mode. But as you can see, he has increased main attack damage from 300 to 320 per bullet, as well as increased super damage from 300 to 320 damage per bullet. So an overall attack damage increase. I think it's going to help him out a lot. Colt shoots off quite a few amount of attacks with one of his basic attacks, so if you're managing to land a good amount of those shots each basic attack, you're going to be racking up a lot of damage with this buff. So next, moving along to Dynamite, someone who has caught my eye as of recently here on the channel. As you can see, increased main attack damage from 760 to 800 per Dynamite. Now I feel like this doesn't necessarily address the problem that we have with Dynamite in the meta, where it's a little bit more difficult to land your shots more consistently and rack up that damage trying to hold down your lane. I still think Dynamite is going to be probably the weaker of the lobbers that we have inside the game, but it's still an attack damage increase. It should still be able to help him out quite a lot in the game. Any buff to a weaker brawler in the meta is definitely okay. Can't complain about that. The next buff is to El Primo, increased health from 5,800 to 6,000. So a very generic buff to a character in the game. I feel like that's kind of their baseline or their safest change that they can make that we've seen from the Brawl Stars dev team. Whenever we have a set of balance changes, just tweak the health, see if it does anything to the brawler. If it doesn't, maybe address it again in the next set of balance changes. So the next buff on our list is M's, increased health from 3,600 to 3,800. So another 200 health increase, as well as a buff to the second star power hype. Healing per enemy hit increased from 300 to 400. I think that is very necessary to M's. The second star power is definitely not the one that a lot of people are using. The first star power is basically staple. You should be using that star power at all times. So maybe we'll be able to see a little bit more usage of the second star power, but overall a pretty safe buff in my eyes as well. And I gotta be honest with you guys, I didn't really think Ems was gonna get a buff on this list of balance changes. She kind of shot past my radar. I never really thought she was that weak in the meta, but we'll have to see if this changes anything. As you all know, the tanks are pretty dang good in the meta, and Ems is a solid counter to the tankier unit. So hopefully we see something from Ems in this next meta. So moving along to another tank on our list, and that is Frank. Increased health from 6,100 to 6,400. So guys, moving it up a barrel, guys. We're going 300 health on Frank. A lot of health buffs on the buff category in today's video. So I feel like every single buff that we see to Frank, and I've said this time and time again, that Frank definitely needs a little bit of love. His mechanics are very clunky and hard to get used to, and once you get him down, they're still not that crazy overpowered or anything like that. Even a God Frank can have a hard time in the meta, in my personal opinion. But every single buff that comes to Frank, I feel like, is to his health. I would love to see something change to maybe his star powers, like an increased damage on the first star power, even more health from Sponge. I'm not sure. Or maybe just like a total rework to his clunky basic attack mechanics. I'm not sure. Another kind of safer buff, but still a buff indeed. So moving on to the next buff on our list, a definitely well requested buff, and that is to our good friend Leon. Guys, Leon has never been in a worse spot in the meta since he's been released inside of the game, and I think he was definitely deserving of it. He waited quite a long time for it, and as as you can see, it's an increased main attack damage from 103 to 178 at maximum range. Now, I want to make this really clear on how this is going to work. His overall attack damage when you're right up close isn't going to be affected, so he's still going to do the same exact amount of damage when you're right up close to someone. What this change is to his long range chip damage. So at his maximum range, instead of dealing 103 damage each shuriken, you're going to be dealing 178. I love this change for Leon. I feel like I've said this time and time again, my biggest reasoning for why Leon is so weak, especially in 3v3 game modes, is he has no laning. The only way that he can pressure people out of his lane is with an assassination. So a fell swoop taking them out, and then you have your lane secured. So basically you're resorting to gimmicks with Leon, and I think this is going to help him out with that long range chip damage, trying to control your lane in that sense. And I feel like it's going to also add a little bit more of a higher skill cap mechanic to Leon, because you have to land those long range chip damages by aiming your shots in an effective way, much like we see from the mechanic with bow, being able to land all 3 of your arrows. Leon has the same shot pattern, so maybe we'll see some training with Leon going into this. So I'm really excited for this change. I think it's going to be fantastic. Also, I know we've been talking about Leon for a while. This is also going to help him out a lot in charging up his super with that chip damage. More damage equals faster super regeneration, so I think it's going to be a really, really good buff to Leon, and a very unique one. I like that, not just a health increase. Freaking amazing. Next is our thick queen, and that is Pam. Increased health from 4,500 to 4,800, so a 300 health increase. Like I said before, a lot of health buffs on this list today. And then next, moving on to another gem carrier, and that is Poco. Increased health from 3,800 to 4,000, another health increase, 200 this time. We'll see what it does. It should be the same outcome as the other health increases on this list, just another buff to Poco. So we have 2 more buffs left. The next one is to another legendary that I feel like has been in a very tight spot, and that is Spike. Increased main attack damage from 480 to 520 per Spike. Now, I think this is definitely going to help him out a lot. I feel like Spike isn't the weakest legendary on the list, but I guess use rates might be down with Spike or something like that. I guess I don't see him as much in 3v3s when he used to be flourishing as that one brawler that you should just be using on your team if you can't decide what brawler to bring in. Spike is always that brawler that kind of can hold his own, fulfilling that role if you need someone else. So hopefully this helps him out a little bit. It's a good attack damage increased. He's going to have even more bursty damage. So finally, making our way to the last buff of our list of balance changes, and that is to Tick. We have increased main attack damage from 640 to 680. Now guys, this is the one that I don't necessarily agree with a whole lot from this list of balance changes. Now, I would be lying to you guys if I told you that the only reason I don't like this change is for personal reasons, because it's not the case. I feel like Tick has just fine use rates. I feel like I see him in basically every single game mode in a lot of the different comps that are actually good in the meta right now. Even some of the game modes where you wouldn't necessarily think that he fit in that well, such as Brawl Ball, he is fitting in just fine on particular maps in those game modes. Really, the only game mode that he's not that good in is in Showdown, Solo Showdown. He's actually really good in Duo Showdown, if I do say so myself. But yeah, you guys, you'll have to let me know what you're thinking about this change in the comments down below. This is the only one that I have really gripes with the actual changes on the list. We'll get into things that I don't necessarily like with things not being on the list at the very end of the video today. So moving along to the nerfs that we have in this list of balance changes, like I said before, we have a grand total of 5 different brawlers getting nerfs in this update. So the very first one is to 8-bit. 8-bit no longer has invulnerability bubble after respawning with extra life. I feel like this is warranted. So basically how it's going to work is you're going to come back to life, but just not have that couple seconds of invulnerability to get your grasp and your reins on what's happening in the match and getting away to safety and stuff like that. I feel like it should be good. I think it's still going to be versatile in 3v3 game modes where you're still coming back to life. At the very least, you're going to be like a distraction. You're going to be like a meat shield to help out your teammates. And then moving along to our next one, and that is to B. Thank you, God. B is amazing in the meta right now, and she did get a hefty nerf. So the very first one is Honeycoat. Now triggers only once per match. This is devastating, guys. This is huge. So basically how it's going to work in 3v3s, you're going to proc your shield once, but once you get that proc, you're never going to be able to use it again. No matter how many times you die, you're never going to get it again. So I like this change a lot. We'll have to see what it does to her moving forward. So the next change to B is invulnerability shield duration after Honeycoat triggers has been increased from 0.6 seconds to 1 second. So this is a buff to be, but a buff to just kind of equalize honeycoat. It's still got to be somewhat useful. If you only get it one time a match, it's got to be decent. It's got to be useful. So I agree with this change. It's nothing crazy. It's 0.4 seconds. So our next nerf on our list is to Carl. Protective pirouette damage reduction decrease from 40% to 30%. I like this change. Guys, I've said this time and time again in my previous videos that Carl's second star power is probably one of the best star powers in the entire game. It complements his super so dang good. So I'm thinking 10% is going to be definitely a notable decrease. We're going to be able to see it's definitely not as good moving forward. I think it's still going to be really good. 30% is still a lot of damage reduction, just not as crazy. Hopefully we don't see Carl spinning in on two people, taking them both out, using that damage to get your super again to get the heck out of there, carrying away 8 gems or something like that. We'll have to see. Then next is Daryl. Steel Hoop's shield duration decreased from 2.5 seconds to 0.9 seconds. Holy crap. Guys, this has to be one of the biggest nerfs on the list in today's video. When I first saw this, I was completely shocked because every single nerf that we've seen to Daryl leading up to this, which is basically every single list of balance changes that we've gotten, like the last 5 or 4, we've gotten these little tiny nerfs to Daryl, like the damage reduction or the shield reduction on the damage coming in would just get a tiny little tweak. But guys, this is huge. Daryl's shield after this list of balance changes goes live is going to last shorter than honeycoat. I find that absolutely insane. I feel like it's going to definitely switch up the way Daryl is going to be played here moving forward. And then moving along to the final nerf and the final change of our list of balance changes today, and that is to Mr. P. Main attack range decreased by 12.5%. This is huge. I believe this is one of the recommendations that I gave in our video to nerf Mr. P to make him a little bit more balanced. That was one thing that made him incredibly overpowered. When you're using the first star power, you have incredible range with Mr. P, sniping people from such a long ways away. I feel like he almost rivaled Piper's range or even further which was a crazy asset in his arsenal. So we'll see what happens to him moving forward. Now, at the very end of the video here, I just want to go over my general opinions on this list. Hope you guys made it to this portion because I would like to hear some dialogue from you guys on my opinions on this list today. So of course, the very first thing is we got 15 changes, so that's quite a lot. Hopefully we see some changes in the next meta moving forward, and I think with this list we're probably going to be seeing that to some extent. Now, one thing that I do want to bring up about this list is yes, we did get 15 total brawlers changed on this list and 10 buffs at that. I was really adamant on some of the brawlers that are weaker in the meta, giving them buffs to see them flourish, or just seeing some of the brawlers that we've seen at bottom of the list coming up to the middle so we can have a little bit more fun with those brawlers. But I would say 1/3 of the overall changes on this list were health increases for the buffs, and I get that it's an easier buff to make. It doesn't impact it. It's not gonna freak out the meta that much. It's just one thing that you can give to a brawler, see if it does anything to him, if it helps them. If it needs even more, you give him something else, maybe an attack damage increase or something along those lines. But again, I do want to remind you that health can go a long way in these lists of balance changes. I think it was a couple metas ago where Daryl was not even close to the top of the leaderboard, and he got a 300 health increase or 400 health increase, and then he got skyrocketed. Everyone thought that it was just the health increase that bumped him up there, and I think it was Daryl. It might have been someone else. For some reason I'm thinking it's Pam or something like that, but health can do a lot to a brawler, so we'll see if any of these brawlers can flourish because of that. That would be awesome. And the final things that I have little gripes about these balance changes aren't necessarily the ones on the list. They're the ones not making the list. So of course I gotta bring it out. My boy Mortis feels bad, man. He hasn't gotten a buff in so dang long, and he's still gonna be very weak in the meta after these lists of balance changes. I guarantee you that. As well as I was really looking forward to see something from Crow. I don't know why. I really wanted to see something change, something tweaked on Crow, just to see him a little bit more in 3v3s. I might be crazy about that one, but I feel like Crow is a little bit weaker. But yeah, guys, with all the negatives out of the way, I feel like this list is definitely extensive. I think it's going to switch up the meta. It's anything that you can ask for a list of balance changes. Really psyched about the Leon one. I think that's going to be a lot of fun to test out, see how he performs in the meta with this buff. I think it's one of the more unique changes on the list that I'm really excited about. That makes me actually want to hop on and test it out and see what he can do. So that's really, really exciting. And then that Tick pick, man. Why is it always Tick? He don't need a buff. Get Tick out of here. I don't want to see him in the meta anymore. It feels bad, man. But guys, hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to slap a like on it. I really am looking forward to hearing what you guys think about the list. What are your pet peeves? What do you like about the list? I love seeing dialogue on these types of videos. But yeah, guys, with that being said, everyone, make sure to keep having fun with Brawl Stars, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace out.